10 cavers walk into the narrow entrance of Mossdale Caverns in the Yorkshire Dales, but 6 of them never return. On the moor above, rescuers are digging a trench the length of a football field, building an emergency dam across a rising stream, and sending teams into a flooded crawl so tight you can barely turn your head. But these were some of the strongest cavers in Britain in a cave they knew. So why did only 4 come back, and what happened to those who didn't? To answer that, we need to go back a few hours, to the morning of June 24th. That day, 26-year-old Dave Adamson plans to lead a team of 10 from several Yorkshire caving clubs to Mossdale's Scar. Now, Mossdale is not a typical tourist cave. It's a long limestone system under open moorland with cold streams, tight crawls, and a history of flooding. We know from contemporary rescue reports that Mossdale already had a reputation as one of the most flood-prone cave systems in Britain, and when cavers say flood-prone, they don't mean your boots might get wet. Instead, they mean the passages are so low that when water levels rise, section can go completely underwater. No headroom, no air gap, nowhere to stand up and wait it out. Now, this particular group wasn't rookies. In fact, they were quite experienced and knew Mossdale in and out, especially the risks associated with it. But there's another problem. The weather forecasts mention thunderstorms coming in a few hours. However, when the group looks up, the sky over the moor seems good enough to go. If you work outdoors, you've probably had days where the forecast is worse than what you can actually see with your own eyes. So, do you trust the forecast, or do you trust the sky right in front of you? By late morning, the group gathers at Mossdale Scar's entrance, where a moorland stream called Mossdale Beck disappears into a narrow opening in the rock. However, out of the 10 that go underground, not everyone is planning a deeper push. After a few hours in those caves, 2 of the men, Jim Cunningham and Joan Shepherd, grow uneasy because of the early forecast. So they agree to escort the only 2 women among them, Morag Forbes and Colette Lord, on a shorter, easier route back out towards the entrance. Meanwhile, the remaining 6 men continue going deeper beyond Marathon Crawl. And this change in plans is where the entire story splits. For those of you who don't know, Marathon Crawl is a notorious section that sits below Mossdale's stream passages. And as the name suggests, it's roughly 900 feet of valley crawling in cold water, cramped, slow, and you're lying on your stomach the whole time. So if you go beyond Marathon Crawl, getting out again is never just turn around and walk back. Even in perfect conditions, it's 900 feet of reverse crawl in cold water with very few places to stop or warm up. As the underground group crawls through muddy water, getting closer to their objective and farther from the exit, those who turned back reached the surface around 5 p.m. and found light rain. However, it still wasn't alarming enough to warn their underground fellows. Morag chooses to stay close to the cave, knowing Dave's team wasn't due out until around midnight. Now, remember that light rain? Well, it didn't stay that way for long. Weather records and later analysis suggest that between about 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. more than an inch of rain fell in just 3 hours over the moorland feeding Mossdale Beck, which is a lot of water for that kind of landscape. Consequently, the ground couldn't absorb it quickly enough. Gallons of water rushed into every gully and shake hole, and Mossdale Becks swelled fast, turning muddy. When Morag sees the water change and grow more violent, she goes back to check the entrance, and the scene before her is nothing like she left it. Instead of the usually wide entrance, the entire area was underwater. It looked as if the cave had turned into a siphon, pulling the storm runoff straight into the passages. By around midnight, the Upper Wharfedale Fell Rescue Association reaches Mossdale. They find the entrance completely submerged, with a new lake pooled in front of the scar. The sight immediately escalates efforts to rescue the 6 men. Phone calls go out to caving clubs and local pubs across Yorkshire, including the one where Cunningham and Shepherd were still sitting. Within hours of hearing the news, cavers, farmers, miners, police and fire crews converge on the moor in heavy rain carrying pumps, hoses, timber, and whatever tools they could find. When we read through the rescue logs, what jumps out is the scale of the engineering project they improvised in the dark. They dug a diversion trench roughly 6 feet wide, 10 feet deep, and almost 100 yards long to carry the stream away from the cave entrance. They built an earthen dam across the back, reinforcing it with thousands of sandbags. They brought in high-capacity pumps to lower the water level in front of the cave. One official report later compared the scene at the dawn to a battlefield because of the mud, the machinery, and the sheer number of people working against the clock. Throughout that first night, there is no contact from the 6 men underground. The only thing the rescuers can see is the waterline rising and falling. They had no way of knowing whether anyone had found air pockets higher up, whether the group had somehow escaped, or whether the flood had been instantly fatal. By early afternoon on Sunday, June 25th, the dam and trench has lowered the water enough to expose the entrance again. A search team of experienced cavers diligently prepares to go in. Among them was Tony Walton, a caver and geologist who'd been to the far end of Mossdale before, and Jim Eyrie, a well-known figure in British caving. As one can imagine, the conditions inside were horrible. The passages were still wet and muddy. The air was cold. The team continues calling ahead in case anyone is alive and able to answer. So what really happened to those men in the past few hours? Incident records state that by 9 p.m. the group had been crawling for several hours and was already beyond marathon crawl. Although we don't have exact in-person accounts of the cavers, we still put together what the cave surveys and rescuers later found, sketching out a likely sequence of what happened inside those passages. The first hints of danger may have been subtle for the group. A rumble upstream, a change in the air current, the sound of water getting louder somewhere ahead, and the water that was brushing their elbows beginning to creep higher. Just imagine you're on your belly in a tunnel only inches high. The rock is right above your face. The floor is uneven. You can't just stand up and walk. And now that the cold water levels are rising, would you be able to crawl back before it's too late? In his own account, Walton describes coming across 2 bodies jammed in the narrow passage, and then 3 more a little further on. All 5 had drowned where the flood had caught them. However, there is no sign of the 6th man, John Ogden, in that first push. Was he alive? Was he stuck? Either of those questions kept giving rescuers hope to keep looking. In that moment, the team has to make a brutal call. Push on further into a constricted, flood-prone passage, or get the team back out while the dam is holding, leaving the bodies behind. Choosing the second option, rescuers begin weeping while squeezing past their friends' bodies to withdraw from the cave. Upon getting out, they relay the news to the surface that the men they'd found were already dead. However, the discovery of those first 5 bodies doesn't end the operation, because over the next few days, teams kept going back into the cave when conditions allowed, pushing further to find John. Up until Tuesday the 27th, when after more pumping and reinforcement of the dam, they found him wedged in a fissure where he appears to have made a final stand as the water rose. By the early next day, all 6 of the missing cavers had been accounted for, but not one had survived the flood. After consulting the families, the coroner for the area, Stephen Brown, takes the unusual step of holding an inquest without the bodies present. He then orders the Mossdale Caverns be permanently sealed to prevent any further loss of life. Within days, concrete was poured into its main entrance, and the cave, quite literally, turned into those men's tomb.